Beyond the Gate spoilers tease that the recent production shakeup might be the most explosive turn yet in a show already known for its intense narrative pivots. With Keith D. Robinson sidelined by an unexpected accident, the character of Ted already complex and central to many of the show's biggest arcs is left in limbo. But not for long. Because in a twist that few fans saw coming, the original Ted, Maurice, is now poised to return, and not just in a guest capacity. Word from behind the scenes suggests that Ted is about to take center stage like never before. This entire saga began behind the camera, with Keith D. Robinson stepping into the role of Ted after Maurice's departure several seasons back. Maurice, once the defining face of Ted, exited the show under quiet, somewhat murky circumstances. At the time, Keith was seen as a fresh direction for the character, injecting a new layer of subtlety and grit into Ted's persona. Audiences responded positively, but there was always a lingering memory of Maurice's version of Ted, sharper, edgier, more unpredictable. Keith brought consistency, which the writers leaned into. Ted under Keith's tenure became less volatile and more calculating. He was a survivor, a thinker, someone who bided his time. And it worked. Keith's portrayal offered a slow-burn psychological complexity. But just as the writers began sculpting major storylines around his Ted, delving into his past affiliations, his childhood scars, his strained loyalties, tragedy struck. Keith's real-life accident was not only a personal blow, but also a seismic shift for the show. Production halted briefly. Rumors circulated. And then Michelle Van Gien made her move. As the showrunner and lead writer, Michelle Van Gien has long been known for her ruthlessness in service of the story. She's killed off fan favorites, flipped timelines, and destroyed alliances with zero hesitation. Her decision to reach out to Maurice wasn't just strategic, it was surgical. She needed a Ted who could carry the chaos, who could escalate the drama with menace and charisma. And Maurice, long silent but never forgotten, agreed to return. Insiders suggest that his return was conditional. Maurice, still bruised from his initial departure, wanted assurances. Not just a paycheck. Not a side arc. He wanted Ted to be central again. Michelle didn't hesitate. She promised him not just a comeback, but a recrowning. Ted wouldn't just reappear. He'd erupt back into the narrative as a dominant force. The writing team responded by gutting existing plans and crafting an entirely new arc. In the lead-up to Maurice's first reappearance, the show laid down a series of unsettling beats. Mysterious messages. Ominous glances. A sudden, bloody power vacuum. Characters close to Ted began receiving cryptic threats. Old enemies started dying in strange circumstances. And then, with no fanfare, the screen faded to black, one episode only to return with a single figure in the shadows, Ted. But this Ted isn't the one viewers remember from Maurice's original run. He's older, meaner, and driven by something far darker than ambition. There are flashes of the old charm, yes, the wit, the casual confidence, but it's coated now in steel. Maurice's Ted has been somewhere terrible, and he's brought it back with him. The writing leans into this change. Dialogue is sharp, deliberate. His scenes are loaded with tension. Characters who once mocked or dismissed Ted now look over their shoulders. Behind the scenes, Michelle Van Gien is pulling every string. The rumors say she's planned at least a full season arc focused solely on Ted's revenge plot. And while the details are still being tightly guarded, early leaks hint at a methodical, brutal unraveling of those who crossed him. One character unconfirmed, but possibly Devon may be the first to fall. Devon, who rose in power during Ted's absence, is shown increasingly paranoid, haunted by shadows only he can see. Whispers in the dark. Faces in the crowd. A returned Ted playing the long game. Maurice plays this with chilling precision. He doesn't need long monologues. A single look does the job. In one scene, Ted walks silently through the ruins of his former office, untouched since the fire that nearly killed him seasons ago. He brushes a finger across the ash-covered desk. No words. Just a slow, knowing smile. The message is clear. He's not back to negotiate. Fans have speculated that the revenge plot will be deeply personal. Ted may not just be targeting his old enemies, might be coming for those he once called allies. People who moved on without him. People who tried to fill the void he left. If that's true, the entire core cast is in danger. Michelle Van Geen's scripts are known for twisting the knife when viewers least expect it, and with Maurice's return, the tension is suffocating. Even more intriguing is how this affects the larger mythos of Beyond the Gates. Ted has always been something of a wild card, dancing between protagonist and antagonist, a man with just enough heart to keep you hoping, and just enough ruthlessness to betray that hope. With Maurice back, those lines blur even further. Viewers can't tell if they're meant to root for Ted or fear him. The production has taken advantage of this ambiguity. Lighting choices shift dramatically in his scene's harsh shadows, piercing whites, moments where he's framed almost like a ghost. The score changes, too. Gone is the orchestral swell that once accompanied his entrances. Now, it's something colder. Minimalist. Almost predatory. These aren't accidents. They signal that Ted isn't just a character anymore, he's become a presence. And yet, there's empathy buried deep in this transformation. Michelle has reportedly written scenes where Ted is alone, vulnerable. Glimpses of a man who's been abandoned, betrayed, nearly erased. It's in these moments that Maurice shows his range. His eyes haunted. His body language small, almost boyish. These are the cracks in the armor. And they're devastating. Because just when viewers start to feel sorry for him, the mask snaps back on and someone ends up bleeding. The writers also use these contrasts to set up what might be the most pivotal sequence of the season, a private confrontation between Ted and Michelle's new golden character, Eliza. Eliza, who rose to fan-favorite status during Maurice's absence, is sharp, idealistic, and completely unafraid. The scene rumored to be in episode 7 is said to be nearly 10 minutes of uninterrupted dialogue. No cuts. Just two titans in a room, circling each other with words like knives. Leaked lines from this scene have already gone viral, Eliza telling Ted, "You don't scare me. You're just another ghost looking for a story to haunt." And Ted replying, "Then why are your hands shaking?" If this is the kind of writing Michelle Van Geen is committing to, it's clear this isn't just a return, it's a resurrection. Maurice's Ted isn't here to pick up where things left off. He's here to rewrite the ending. The creative gamble is enormous. Recasting a character once is risky. Recasting them twice and then reintroducing the original actor with a full tonal shift? That's rare. But Beyond the Gates has always thrived on high-stakes reinvention. And this arc might be the boldest yet. Michelle Van Geen has gambled everything on Maurice's ability to carry the storyline. From the press releases to the teaser trailers, all signs point to Ted becoming the gravitational center of the show. Every plot thread now bends toward him. Every alliance, every betrayal, every secret all converges on this one character. And fans are bracing for impact. Because Ted isn't back to be understood. He's back to be feared. The confrontation between Eliza and Ted was just the spark. What follows is a calculated unraveling of everything the power players have built in Ted's absence. And at the heart of it all is Maurice, now fully embodying a Ted who walks the line between mastermind and man on the brink. The camera lingers longer on his silences. The audience can't look away. With Keith D. Robinson out of commission, the show never officially wrote his Ted out, it simply let the image fade, leaving the character's fate hanging. But viewers noticed. Michelle Van Geen's silence on the matter was intentional. Rumors now swirl that she might use Keith's version as a phantom, either a memory or, in true genre-bending form, a hallucination. Perhaps Maurice's Ted will be haunted by Keith's interpretation, the quieter, more human Ted. It would serve to deepen the internal war raging beneath Maurice's colder surface. But the real fireworks begin with Maurice's ascent. Michelle has made it clear that Ted is no longer a supporting thread, he's the core. And as he steps into the spotlight, every move he makes ripples through the power structure. There's an eerie precision to his actions. He doesn't lash out randomly. He studies, isolates, and dismantles. The first to feel his wrath is Devon. Once Ted's closest ally, Devon now represents everything Ted despises: opportunism, betrayal, and unchecked ambition. The two had risen through the same storm once, bonded by fire. But in Ted's absence, Devon grew fat on power. He aligned himself with the gatekeepers, silencing dissent, burying secrets. When Ted returns, Devon's throne becomes a target. Their showdown is stretched across several episodes, but it begins subtly. An anonymous tip leaks Devon's involvement in the disappearance of a whistleblower. Devon scrambles, paranoid. The audience watches as he unravels. Ted never appears in these early scenes, but his fingerprints are all over the chaos. By the time they finally share the screen, Devon is desperate, looking over his shoulder. Ted just smirks and says, "You always knew I'd come back. You just hoped you'd be gone before I did." Maurice delivers the line like a verdict. There's no shouting, no fight. Just a silent power shift. Devon disappears the next episode off-screen. No body. No explanation. Just a news headline: former councilman missing, foul play suspected. It's the most chilling disappearance in the show's history because the silence screams louder than any gunshot. Meanwhile, whispers about Ted's return reach Maurice's former circles. There are two camps: those who fear what he knows, and those who believe they can manipulate him again. Among the latter is an unnamed figure presumed to have driven Maurice away in the first place, one of the gatekeepers who orchestrated his character's downfall from within. Michelle Van Gien hints through visual symbolism that Ted has not forgotten this betrayal. One scene places Ted in front of a corkboard covered in newspaper clippings. The names are redacted, but fans freeze frame and decode hidden messages. An envelope bears the initials MJ, another nod from Michelle that she herself is part of the fiction. It's meta, it's bold, and it blurs the line between writer and character. The drama intensifies when Ted begins manipulating others into carrying out his vision. He doesn't kill. He compels. One of Devon's former bodyguards, a character with no more than 3 lines in previous seasons, is now a sleeper agent of sorts. Ted recruits him with nothing more than a story about betrayal, a drink, and a quiet promise: you don't owe him loyalty. He forgot your name the moment he got his. The guard nods. The next day, key surveillance footage goes missing. Maurice's performance sells this eerie charm. He isn't loud. He doesn't need theatrics. He commands through presence. The fear isn't that he'll lash out, it's that he already has, and you didn't see it coming. Then there's the meta layer: fans recalling that Maurice was the original Ted. Within the universe of the show, this is mirrored through characters mentioning the old Ted as if he's myth, legend, ghost. His return isn't just a plot deficit, a reckoning. And Michelle Van Gien is scripting every beat like a war symphony. Maurice's scenes grow increasingly surreal. The lighting distorts. Dialogue becomes fragmented. There's a moment when he stares into a mirror, and for a single frame, Keith D. Robinson's Ted is reflected back. It's not acknowledged. It's not explained. But fans lose their minds dissecting it. Theories abound. Was it a hallucination? A memory? A sign that Ted is fracturing? Because while Ted rises, so does the cost. Michelle doesn't allow power without sacrifice. And Ted begins to lose control, not of others, but of himself. Flashbacks haunt him. Nightmares bleed into waking life. He begins talking to someone who isn't there. His voice softens in private scenes, almost childlike. In one, he stands over the grave of someone unnamed, muttering, "You said I'd burn it all down. You didn't say I'd miss the ashes." This duality becomes the heartbeat of Maurice's arc. A man who came back to destroy, slowly realizing he's become a prisoner of his own vengeance. And yet, he doesn't stop. He can't. Michelle Van Gien scripts him as a tragic tyrant, unstoppable, but slowly crumbling from within. The climax looms. Ted sets his sights on the last person who knew both versions of him, the woman who replaced him in more ways than one. She was the audience's comfort during Maurice's absence. Now she becomes his mirror and possibly his end. But Michelle is careful. She doesn't rush. The final few episodes are a slow, suffocating descent. The world grows smaller. Ted begins destroying the structures that gave him power. He sets fire to his own archives. He sends cryptic letters to allies, telling them to leave. He starts erasing himself from the system he just conquered. And then, in the penultimate scene, Ted disappears. The screen lingers on his empty chair. A monologue plays his voice, but distant, recorded. You wanted a monster. You needed one. I just gave you what you asked for. The screen fades to black. Credits roll. And in the final frame, a single hand reaches into frame picking up a scorched photo of Ted. We don't see the face. But the implication is clear. This isn't over. Michelle Van Geen's story, and Maurice's performance, has turned a character into a myth. Ted is no longer just a role. He's an idea, a force, a shadow cast over every decision the remaining characters make. And as the show teases its next arc, one thing becomes certain. Even when he's gone, Ted never really leaves.